على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا وقدوتنا محمد عليه أفضل الصلاة وأزكى التسليم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يا رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's well rested and well caffeinated. We're starting with session 2 of Al-Dharī'a ila Makārim al-Sharīa. I love to reward the people who are here early and on time. I don't believe in starting late, if at all possible. Of all the things that were brought up yesterday, within the last 24 hours, I was kind of surprised and pleasantly surprised at how many people were really interested about like the flip phone thing. Apparently that caused quite a stir. And it's totally possible. Like, so we actually had a little heart-to-heart with the men in the Cove last night. There's several things that I think are important considerations for taking back your life, taking back your intention, and just reconnecting and protecting that space in which relationships and connection happen, especially with your spouse and your kids. I think that moving from a smartphone to a flip phone is one of the best things that I've done. Getting off WhatsApp is one of the best things that I've done. And really just going with quality over quantity. Now, some people had some questions about that, so I'm just going to like front load that before we get into the actual text. A lot of people are like, well, isn't there good that can be done on like social media, especially for like activism and organizing and whatnot? And yes, there is, even if we might overestimate at times how much can be done on social media. We don't want to become, clicktivists or whatever. Like, there's a lot of real work that sometimes is displaced by online work. However, if you find that you absolutely can't do without a social media account of some type or shape, my advice would be to question whether you're a consumer or a producer, okay? That a lot of people have the intention of starting out as a producer, but they end up just being a consumer. And if you're a consumer of social media, not a producer of it, then you're the product. And that's a difficult position to be in. Another thing is that the smartphone is designed to be a hyper-individualistic device, which is why people get like super proprietary and possessive over it. It's like, my precious, like people act like, Bilbo Baggins with their devices. Collectivize it, whether with your spouse or with a friend or somebody else. Make it a joint phone, one that 2 people use or 3 people use. And if you can't do that within your household, if you live by yourself or something like that, then at least the accounts that you have, try to make them collective accounts that multiple people have access to. There's a lot more accountability with collectivity. That's a principle. Somebody asked me if I went through withdrawal. No, the opposite. I had become so like avoidant and traumatized by like all the unread messages or people I left unread and stuff like that, that it was a tremendous relief to change the digital arrangement. It is possible, you can do it. Experiment, life's short. Just try it for 6 months or a quarter, 4 months or something like that, and see. I highlight, especially when it comes to family. Another thing, if you haven't read James Clear's Atomic Habits, you absolutely should. I know Ustad Amjad has covered it. I've covered it for Yaqeen. And one of the many benefits of that book, in addition to getting you habits to take your life back, is to understand like how to design your space at home and at work so that your personal time is your personal time, your family time is your family time, and your work time is your work time, right? So tying pieces of technology to literal furniture, right? Like this laptop doesn't leave this table, or even this smartphone doesn't leave this room, right? Is really, really significant and works very, very well to creating that mental association of this is for this work or this particular task or these types of tasks, and then this other space is for these other types of tasks, connection, family, things like that. And it's a language that's so subtle that everybody picks up on it. So there's no confusion with your children or your spouse about like, when are you available or when are you not available, when are you there to talk or when are you not there to talk. So it helps clear up a lot of things. All right, session 2. This particular session deals with the question, can people change? And if so, how much? To what extent? It also deals with the idea of blessings or the bounty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How do we reconcile? There's a tension in calling the good things, the fun things, the nice things in life a bounty of Allah, but then also saying, but watch out, because it's a trap, right? How do we resolve that tension? There's actually a really beautiful way that al-Rāghib al-Iṣfahānī resolves that. But first, so can we change? How often have we heard people justify their own poor behavior or excuses by saying, that's just how I am? This phrase is doing a lot of work. Al-Rāghib al-Iṣfahānī breaks down 4 components to your character. 2 of them are in your control, 2 of them are not. The first is the innate disposition or the potential that you have. And he compares it actually to a date pit, right? Or a seed. I take any seed if you're not familiar with dates. Any seed, if you have an apple, you get into the core has a seed. Okay, that apple seed can only become an apple tree. It's not going to become an orange tree. It's not going to become a blueberry bush or anything. So its potentiality is fixed in a certain way. However, if you were to plant that seed, what type of, or I should say, how healthy of an individual plant that is, right? There are healthy apple trees and there are not healthy apple trees. There are vigorous, to use the farming term, vigorous blueberry bushes, and there are not vigorous blueberry bushes. A lot of that has to do with how you take care of it and the things that you do to cultivate around that particular plant. But before we get there, so that's number 1, is the innate disposition. That's something that nobody really controls. It's handed to you. The second thing is your natural inclination, okay? And these are very technical Arabic terms. I'm trying to reduce the terminology. But what he means here is some people are given certain traits that other people are not given. Sometimes it's easier for other people, or for some people rather, to be more patient than others, for example. Some people run hot or they have a shorter temper. Some people are just more easygoing. Some of these things are gifted to us, and we have this actually in a hadith of al-Ashaj, who was in a group of people that came to the Prophet ﷺ. They were traveling in those days. If you were traveling, you were dusty, you were dirty, you probably didn't smell very good. Most of the group, actually the entire group, went directly to the Prophet ﷺ. Al-Ashaj actually went to clean himself up first. So he showered and he combed his hair and he perfumed himself. And then he came to the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ praised him for it. And he said, you have 2 characteristics that Allah loves. He said, what are those? He said, al-hilm wal-ana. You have forbearance and you take your time. Al-ana, like you're not rushed. You take your time with things. And Al-Ashaj asked a follow-up question, which if there were a book that would gather all the follow-up questions of the companions, it would be a very beneficial book. Maybe it already exists and I'm just not aware of it. But we learn so much from the questions that the companions ask. I know there's a book that gathers the questions of Aisha in particular. But to gather all the questions of all the companions, he asked, Ya Rasulullah, is this something that Allah created me with? Or is it something that I acquired through my own effort? Thank you. You just solved our whole issue about can I change or can I not change? And the Prophet ﷺ said, because he recognized that yes, this is a valid bifurcation, that there are certain qualities that Allah gives you, and there are certain qualities that you have to work for. And in this particular case, he said, no, Allah made you that way. And then Al-Ashaj, he praises Allah, he says, thanks be to the one who created me in the way that he loves. So this is the second type of thing that is not really up to you, whether you're a little bit more patient than your brothers and sisters or the people around you, or you're a little bit more hot-tempered, or you're a little bit more easygoing, those types of things. It's out of your hands. Sorry, you can't really, you don't have anything to do with the hand that you're dealt. But you do have control over how you play your hand. And that gets us into the next 2 parts, which are in your control. The next one is your character. The character is the sum total of the work that you put in to develop good habits and to inculcate these virtues and develop these virtues. So it becomes your default state. Unfortunately, sometimes, let's say, I don't know, someone triggers you, you lash out. You say something very harsh. The scholars would say that the tongue is like a bucket and the heart is the well. And the tongue goes down and pulls up the water from the well that's in the heart, and it comes out spontaneously. Those things that you do spontaneously, good or bad, okay, it could be generosity. Some people are extremely generous. And they've worked on that to the point where it's automatic. It's second nature. This is part of your character. That's the goal. The goal is to develop and to work on ourselves such that virtues, good behavior, righteous behavior becomes second nature. The thing before that, or the means you could say, to get that is the fourth thing, and that is your aada, that's your habits. Okay, so your habits are actually your terrain or your battlefield of you making choices, making adjustments, forcing yourself to do this, stopping yourself from doing that, in order to get that sum total of your character. Okay, and the character is kind of, you could say, like, the exam, right? It shows, the proof's in the pudding, right? We say. The pudding is your character. Those individual things that accumulate up into the character are those actual individual habits, which makes guarding our habits and paying attention to our habits extremely, extremely important. I'll plug again James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. It's really, really useful. It's as if a crypto-Muslim wrote it. So can you change? Well, let's come at it now from maybe a rational point of view. If we couldn't change, then almost all of the guidance and even the phenomenon of sending messengers and prophets is absurd. Okay? It would be a cruel joke if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us a Quran, telling us what to do, telling us what's good, telling us what's evil, sending a prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam, demonstrating to us good character, and you're going to tell me you can't change? Those two things don't go together. So that's a rational proof, dalil aqli, that yes, you can change. Stop making excuses. Another one that al-Rāghib brings up is that even animals can be trained. You can train a dog, and in fact, that's actually hinges on whether the meat or the game that the dog kills or assists you in obtaining is permissible by virtue of the fact that it can be trained. The same animal doing the same thing, one is trained, one is not trained. One is halal for you to eat, the other is not halal for you to eat. It all has to do with training. So if you can train hawks, yes, they still hunt with hawks in Arabia, or cheetahs, yes, you look it up on YouTube, they still hunt with cheetahs, or dogs in this part of the world, then of course you could be trained. You can train yourself, okay? Just like with animals, some people are more or less receptive, some people it takes a little longer, some people it takes, not as long, but those are individual differences, and we'll get into some of the reasons behind those differences. But the main point here is that yes, absolutely you can change, and you have a duty to change, okay? Do not fall into the stupor of our affirmation-heavy culture. And unfortunately, we see kind of like, we live in a time of extremes. Let's just put it out there. One extreme is all affirmation all the time, right? You are the best, you're enough, live your truth, you are just the way you are, and everybody else has to adjust, and anybody who criticizes you is toxic, you should cut them off. This whole thing, all the way maxed out, it's extreme. You're never gonna, imagine if you had a personal trainer, okay, and they're like, you can't do a push-up, but you know what, you're doing just fine. You're good, you don't need to work on that whatsoever, right? You'd be like, I'm paying for this, like, I want my money back. Right? You expect to be challenged. Now, on the other hand, in some of the toxic and dark parts of the manosphere, right, there's like these, you can like get these tapes of like guys screaming at you, like, you're worthless and you suck. Like, that's like the opposite extreme, right? I used to have a football coach back in the day. He used to tell us, Coach Franz, he said, I can't repeat the words that he said. He was a very potty-mouthed like individual. But he said, you're a worthless and bleepin' football team. And I'll tell you when you're not, so he would say. And he never told us anything different. So it's like that type of thing. And he really railed against the positivity stuff. He actually, one day, he mocked us while he was making us run laps. It was like, the guidance counselor tells me that I need to be more positive. So, yeah. So there's two extremes here, all right? And one of the nice things about James Clear is that he actually, there's data. It's like human beings need something like 20% more difficulty to like reach up. It can't be so difficult that you give up and you despair, but it also can't be like the same level that you're used to, or else you get bored and you fall off and you get lazy and complacent. It's the same thing with your character. You need to keep your edge. You need to have something to aspire to. You need to push yourself, but it can't be like, and unfortunately, we have this in religious discourses sometimes as well. It's like, you're just like nothing, and you're, worse than dirt. And it's like, oh, really? Well, all right. Why should I try? Sometimes that can be a response. So we have to be careful with that. That in between the two, we want a healthy balance of affirmation and challenge, enough challenge to actually push ourselves and to be able to get better. Yearly retreats, Ramadan to Ramadan, they're great milestones, like they recur. That's a really useful metric to be able to see how you're doing. How's your dhikr from year to year? How's your prayer from year to year? How's your Quran from year to year? And you, if you're honest with yourself, you can track whether you're trending in the right direction or the wrong direction. One of the most important things that al-Rāghib clarifies, that a lot of people are confused about today, is the nature of desire itself. That within our capitalistic culture, we have received a message that the way to deal with desire is to indulge it, and that if you indulge it, you'll satisfy it and it'll be less strong. This is the biggest lie that anybody could be sold. Al-Rāghib al-Iṣfahānī is extremely clear. Desire, there's la nihaya laha, like there's no end to it. Like if the more you feed it, the stronger it becomes, which fi'lan, right? We actually see with some of the people have maybe like very dramatic life stories that have turned themselves around. We're talking people like sex addicts and stuff like that. They thought that more would mean that they would actually be satisfied. It's never the case. Or money, or anything. They found the hard way, these types of people, which is why there's ibrah. There's actually very, very important lessons in these people's experiences. They discovered the hard way, the nature of desire. There is no end to it. There is no point of satisfaction through indulgence. The more you feed it, it will get stronger. So actually what we have to do is we have to actively, our habits and our character are how we manage the desire to a proper amount. And the Sharī'a is what allows us to satisfy that desire in a healthy and positive way, usually within the container of relationships that have duty and expectations along with it. And we'll talk more about that when we get into the faculty of desire in a dedicated section, but he teases it now, and it's very, very important because everything is, the more you do it, the more it has momentum. There's inertia to all this work, good or evil. If you are working on your habits, you're working on your character, there's positive momentum and there's negative momentum. There's inertia towards the good and there's also inertia towards the bad. And so we have to be very, very, very careful. Which, by the way, is the grain of truth in all these sort of obnoxious social media folks. Barakallahu feek, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant you a righteous spouse and righteous children. You notice how it's a different young man today. Allah. That's also how I get lots of espresso. Okay, so there's a grain of truth or a kernel of truth in, the military guys that are like, the first thing you should do every day is make your bed. Okay, dude, like, it's not going to solve, Zionism, but it is like, there's the kernel of truth that's correct in that is the inertia. Right? It's like sometimes doing the big things is very, very difficult. And honestly, we don't have the capacity to do them at first. But when you do start small, it can become that habit that then that muscle gets stronger and you develop more and more capacity over time to the point where you're able to handle bigger things. Right? So that's the kernel of truth. And if I were to go on the other section of the internet, manifesting, right? Which is kind of ridiculous ontologically, but the kernel of truth in it is the same type of thing, that if you dedicate time, energy, attention to a certain habit or a certain practice or whatever, yes, you will get better at it and it will yield results, right? That's, I think, the truth part of it. Not true is like if I'm sending out energy into the universe, then, the energy is gonna, I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what's being claimed there. It seems a little woo-woo to me, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who enables things. Anyway, yes. Good. Cultivating anything that's worth doing is hard. All right? We had that lovely Greek phrase from Dr. Ali, learning is pain. I love that. It sounds so good in English. I bet it sounds even better in Greek. And it certainly, anybody who learns languages, like I was mentioning, I'm trying to learn Farsi, learning is pain, right? It's like they give you those little micro exercises where it's like, it's multiple choice, and I got like 10 in a row right. And then it's like, here, now have a conversation. It's like, it's painful. It's painful. I remember I did back before I was a Muslim, I did a summer program in Oaxaca, Mexico, for Spanish. And there was so we were put in homes. And there was a young kid, and he asked me the first morning, what's your name? And I said, thank you. And he laughed at me in my face, right? And I remember the first time when I started doing Quran in the Prophet's Masjid, and I was doing 2-a-days, alhamdulillah, for a while. I was doing after Fajr and then before Isha, or maybe after Isha, I can't remember. And I was wrecked, man. I would have zero energy. I was making horrible mistakes all over. And I was paired for Muraja with a young guy. And every time I started making mistakes, he'd just be like, here's this 11-year-old kid, and he's paired with this, at that time I was in my 20s, It's humiliating, but it's also good. That's the medicine you need. It's the medicine your nafs needs, because anything that's worth doing is difficult. حُفَّتِ الْجَنَّةِ بِالْمَكَارِهِ وَحُفَّتِ النَّارِ بِالشَّهَوَاتِ. The Prophet ﷺ said that Jannah is shrouded behind difficult things that are distasteful, at least initially. They can become sweet, but let's be honest, most of us aren't there. And the hellfire is shrouded in the opposite, things that are tasty, things that are like high fructose corn syrup, right? Give you cancer eventually. Anyway, which of the disciplines, and we're going to get into this in a dedicated section, is the hardest to discipline? Obviously, it's desire, al-quwwa shahwiyya, for reasons. One of those reasons is it's the first capacity that you have. Before you have the capacity of the intellect, before you even have the capacity of being angry, you have the capacity to desire. Desire is very broad here. We're talking about the desire for food, for emotional connection, etc. If you think about it, because the intellect, and al-Rāghib means by intellect the ability to discern between good and evil, doesn't kick in until tamyiz, right? Until around 10 or thereabouts. Your shahwa has free reign over your formation until that point. So shahwa gets a head start, a long runway, to basically get you into these habits. That's why some people say that children are pure shahwa, because they're just oh, I'm hungry, oh, I want this, I want that. And we expect that from that particular age range. But to be honest, many of us as adults are the same. We just found a couple more polite ways to do that. But that's why it's very difficult. This thing has had free reign over you, and so it's going to be hard. That's what al-Rāghib is trying to prep you for. It's work, okay? It's not easy, it's not fun. It can be fun once you are along the path, but it's definitely challenging. Someone could ask, قَدْ يَقُولُ الْمُعْتَرِض, why would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us something that is so dangerous and so ensnaring and so with us, and then the whole point of our life is to fight against it and tame it and discipline it? Doesn't that seem like setting us up to fail? I love these types of questions. They're very good questions, because they're like the questions the companions might have asked, and then the other companions would be like, yes, finally we were wondering that. That al-Rāghib has a really interesting answer. He says, without desire, you could not imagine Jannah, and you would not strive for it. Okay? That when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses us in the Quran and calls us to Jannah, and there's levels to the things in Jannah. Obviously, the highest thing is seeing the face of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But in the Quran, Allah is usually addressing us through these desires. Okay? The desire for eating and drinking and even sexual fulfillment. These are things that He addresses to us in the Quran, because the rational pleasures of being virtuous or being in Allah's presence, they're not understood by all people. They're not even understood by most people. So the majority of people need that kind of access point in order to be able to aspire to Jannah at all. Without such desire, people would not have longed for what they have been promised. Now, what's interesting is that, and we'll get to it in a dedicated section, but the desires that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us in this world, the halal desires, are actually pointing towards the everlasting desires in Jannah. And so look at what an inversion and a corruption it is if we allow those desires to dominate us and run our lives, and they become the whole reason that we exist. It's actually a perversion of what they were put here for. They were put here in order to guide us and motivate us towards aspiring to Jannah. And we lose the plot if we think that that's the whole reason that we're here. Good. How can you, what's one way to develop on your journey of developing character? Al-Rāghib al-Iṣfahānī is taxonomy heavy. He loves his lists. He would have done really well in the blog age, like listicles. But I've cut out a lot of them because many of them are kind of difficult to follow. But some of the ones I've included. He has 4 rungs here that he talks about when it comes to developing your internal motivation and sort of what it looks like what's stage 1 or phase 2 or phase 3 to developing character. He actually says that the first thing is to believe that the good is good. And I find that very significant because if you don't believe in what you're doing, you can't fake it. We're going to talk about that by the end of this session. Can you fake it till you make it? But if you don't believe that this stuff is actually going to bring satisfaction to your life in this world and the next, why would anyone subject themselves to this? Why would anybody try to do the work or go without or do these types of things? They wouldn't. So if you have fundamental doubts, you got to sort them out, right? They're gonna manifest in your ability to work on yourself and perfect your character. Now the second thing is that, so that's like against relativism, right? There are good things and there are evil things, okay? And that's why we make that dua, Allahumma arina al-haqqa haqqa warzuqna ittiba'a. Like, show us the good as good. There are some people that they have that opposite, and that's a very, very dangerous and scary place to be. The second level is to ground your beliefs in evidence, okay? And he says, because if you ground your beliefs, why is this good? Why is it a good thing that sex should only be in marriage? Right? Why is it a good thing that alcohol is forbidden? Why is it a good thing that gambling is forbidden? Right? Maybe you believe in these things and they're inherited more or less from your culture, your family, but certainly the person who has developed conviction and understands why, or at least has a couple hypotheses as to why these things are true, beyond, yes, Allah said it, then that's going to be a much stronger type of faith, and that's going to actually carry you through when motivation collapses and when temptation calls. Right? So you're kind of fortifying and buttressing that type of faith. The third thing is, the third phase or stage is actually then breaking the habit. So look at how you have to do the interior work and how it then manifests into actions. That breaking bad habits is the next phase, and breaking bad habits actually takes precedence over good habits, establishing good habits. This is a very, very popular fiqh maxim. It's also a political maxim as well. Harm is to be avoided more than benefit is to be procured. If you have to choose between avoiding a harm and obtaining a benefit, you always avoid the harm first. This has a range. When you start doing it, you don't like it. You don't like to break bad habits, right? There have people that accept Islam, do I really have to give up going to the club? Do I really have to give up alcohol? I like alcohol. There are people that do. There are people who like pork. They don't want to give it up. Okay? This is facts. All right? But through the process of breaking bad habits and giving them up, the end point is when you actually start to dislike those things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dislikes. And this is why you have to be very, very careful with what your children consume when it comes to media. We're talking all types of media, books, films, anything. I spark controversy every year with my legacy students. I teach middle school and high school. I teach tafsir for middle schoolers. And I always start off by telling them that Harry Potter is haram. Because I like to trigger people. And I kind of believe it. I'm like, it's likely haram. I'm not, bold enough to say no second opinion, whatever. But my whole purpose pedagogically is to spark a conversation about what theory of media consumption should we have as Muslims? And what I leave them with is, okay, if the whole thing's based on magic, and we believe that magic is haram, and Allah tells you that He hates it, He doesn't like magic, all right? We're not talking about card tricks here. After going through the whole Harry Potter series and binging on it, do you love magic more than you did when you started out? Do you hate magic less than you did when you started out? Like if your main thing is trying to comport yourself to what Allah loves and what Allah doesn't love, how has that been affected by your media consumption? And I'll give very dramatic examples of this from, Jahiliyyah, from before Islam. There's so many songs about cheating on your spouse. There's so many songs, like The Roots, right? Tupo Philly, Philly area. The Seed 2.0, and there's lots of others. Coming to Break You Off, right? Come on, this is like digging back into the past, but these things are things that people embody. They sing them without even realizing the messages that are in them, and then it becomes a possibility, and all of a sudden, they dislike less something that Allah hates. So where have you gone? Which direction, if we're talking, there's two directions here, which direction have you gone in when it comes to, are you closer to loving what Allah loves and hating what Allah hates? Or are you further away? So whatever you decide about Harry Potter or whatever nonsense is out there, just let that be your rubric, or find a better one if you don't like that rubric. How is it affecting my relationship with what Allah loves and what Allah hates? Is it bringing me closer to harmony with that, or is it bringing me further away? Last stage, fourth stage, is to build the good habits, and just like with the other one, there's a spectrum here. Once you start, it's difficult, you don't like it, but eventually you love it. We all know the famous statement of the scholars that prayed night prayers for 20 years and didn't like it, and then finally, after 20 years, started enjoying it. That's halwat al-iman, the sweetness of faith, that it's earned. It doesn't come naturally. It's earned. It's earned through sacrifice. All right, this brings up a question. Al-Ghazali just gave you 4 layers. It started with conviction, interiority, and then it went to your practices and your habits. All right, here's a question about interiority and exteriority. Can you fake it till you make it? This is I like this particular dilemma because we're very concerned in the West with authenticity, being real, right? And there's ways in which that can be okay. But there's ways in which that can be a little bit problematic. Should we not do something or refrain from doing something until we feel motivated to do it? This happens with the prayer, right? Christians will say, well, why should I have to pray 5 times a day? I pray whenever I want to pray. Okay? Ladies, it happens with hijab. Duh, absolutely. So the most common thing I get with questions from women have to do with the hijab and not feeling ready or not feeling like I want to. And there's a really interesting kind of taraddud, hesitation, around, feeling like you need to be. Most women that ask that question, to me at least, they feel like they're a hypocrite because they don't feel like they're pious enough to wear the hijab. Old trick of shaitan, by the way. A really old trick of shaitan. Sabah Mahmood has a really good book called Politics of Piety. She was an anthropologist, Pakistani anthropologist that did her field work in Egypt with the mosque movement, and has a really interesting, okay, there's a lot that could be said there, but I'll try to condense. One of the things that she explores is the relationship between interiority and exteriority. It basically answers this question. Is it such that if we put on an exterior practice, hijab, let's say, before our interior is ready for it, what happens? Is it that we become it becomes a complex and we become resentful about it and then rebel? Or does it create the capacity to actually love it? Her work and al-Rāghib al-Iṣfahānī's work actually intersect on this point. It's really fascinating. Al-Rāghib al-Iṣfahānī basically says, if you choose it, no one's forcing you. If no one's forcing you and you choose it, it actually creates the capacity to love that thing. Then that is when it's acceptable to fake it till you make it. That you are doing these things not for other people, we'll get to when that's problematic, but you're in public or in private trying to subject yourself to an external regime, hoping that it actually changes your interiority. If you play basketball, you got the 3 and you got the paint. Sometimes you shoot the 3 to set up the paint, sometimes you work in the paint to set up the 3. You do whatever works. So he says that is completely fair game. When it's blameworthy is when it is pretense, showing off for fame or prestige or performative piety, we'd call it these days, right? That's hypocrisy, and that is problematic. How do you tell the difference between the two, performative piety versus trying to level up? Al-Rāghib al-Iṣfahānī answers that. He says, are you restless? said the person who is performing for others is always restless. The person who's trying to ascend is calm. And sure enough, back when I used to work in restaurants, I've got like multiple lives that I've lived, as you can tell. I used to work at a Italian restaurant in New Jersey, and there was a lady. We didn't deliver; wasn't that type of a place. It was a nice restaurant, but we did make pizzas in addition to like the other stuff. And there was this lady that would come, and she would phone in, and she would say that she's got an injury or leg's injured or whatever, and she can't come in to pick up the pizza, so we got to bring it out to her to the curb. When I was new, and the first call came in, and I picked it up, and I was like, oh, there's this lady, and I got to bring the pizza. All the rest of the staff that have been around longer were like, oh, that lady? Yeah, she's always injured. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? I was like, you think someone really like faked that? Like, that seems really weird to me. But sure enough, I was the new guy, and I grabbed the pizza, and I went out to the curb, and she rolled down the window, and the first thing she said to me, look, I've got the crutch in the back seat. I was like, oh, yeah, she's faking it. Yeah. So the person who has something to prove, like Turning Point USA, Eric Kirk, all these people, they're always restless. They're always trying to prove to you because they're really attuned to your validation and your recognition. They're not trying to level up. They're not trying to try something on in order to do it. I found it fascinating that al-Iṣfahānī explores all of this 1,000 years ago. All right, why is it easier for some people to change than others? It could be a lot of factors. There's the constitution, there's your upbringing, there's what company you keep, there's the customs around you, there's tawfiq, there's divine assistance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But regardless, your starting point, whether it's different from someone else's or not, it doesn't take away from your responsibility to work on yourself. All right, what about all of the bounties and blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you? Is it just a cruel trap? Is Allah just like digging a bungee pit for you to fall into and, be thrown into hell on your face? Or are these things potentially the raw material that you can use to actually perfect your character and to work on yourself? Al-Iṣfahānī, obviously, he says the latter, is that if you do these things properly, if you use the bounties properly, they can actually be working for you rather than against you. He talks about the hierarchy of goods. The best good, the greatest good is true happiness. That's only in the afterlife. The second greatest good is virtue, the virtues of the soul. We're going to talk about that the rest of the week. And the third are these types of bounties that can help along the way. All these things are interdependent. What are these bounties? He breaks them down into 3 categories. One is external bounties. The other is bounties that have to do with the body. And the third have to do with the soul. External bounties include things like wealth, family, status, lineage. And indeed, they can actually help you in your path if they are properly disciplined and focused. So when it comes to wealth, obviously, zakat is something that takes wealth. Hajj takes wealth. Building wells takes wealth. So if you use it properly, then this is something that can be in your service. It can be for you rather than against you, though, of course, there is a trap and you have to be careful. Family is the same thing. Lut alayhi salam in the Quran actually wishes that he had family to support him or a clan or a tribe to back him up when he was trying to call his people away from fahisha. That al-Iṣfahānī compares your family, and he means by it not just your nuclear, but your extended family to your network. That's your eyes, your ears. It extends beyond the borders of yourself. And I think it's a fascinating thing to consider, the borders of yourself. There's a tangent there, but we're short on time. I'm not going to go down that. Rather than thinking of yourself as an individual, to think of yourself as a collective is quite interesting. And I think that has some precedence in the Sharia. When it comes to status, it can serve. It can help da'wah. It can help you be accepted. It can even help your reputation. Some people will say, it's like, oh, that's so-and-so's kid. Like, hold on, like, easy. Like, don't pick on them or something like that. It can actually come in handy in certain places or situations. Lineage as well. Lineage can help if it is a model for righteous behavior that you follow, not to rest on your laurels and say, oh, yeah, well, my grandfather is so-and-so, or I'm a this, so that means that I'm X. No, it doesn't work like that. You can't inherit your spot in Jannah. Lineage paired with effort is great. But if you have to choose one or the other, then effort with a poor lineage is going to beat lineage with no effort any day of the week. Bounties that have to do with the body include health, worship, jihad. These things take health, strength, yes. Physical beauty. Al-Rāghib al-Iṣfahānī says physical beauty. Now, calm down, calm down. It's not what you think. Because he clarifies that what he means by physical beauty being a bounty is actually the type of radiance that mostly manifests in the face. Some people call it nur. That is a reflection of your internal state, your virtue. That there are people who are conventionally ugly or who do not have pleasant features, right? Which we're unfortunately trained to think that beauty is the size of this and the shape of that. It's not. It's actually about the manifestation of character outwardly. That's what al-Rāghib al-Iṣfahānī is talking about. There's a whole tangent we could go on, but again, we're short on time, about the guidance in the Quran and in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ to not display our beauty, both men and women, and to avert our gaze. Very, very important. Both men and women are responsible for averting our gaze. Both men and women are responsible for having modesty. We'll talk about modesty in detail. That displaying your physical beauty is a really, really evil thing to do. Most people these days, especially with Instagram, sorry ladies, especially with the ladies, because they target you, because they know what types of things that men and women look for validation. It's really, really a dark place that we've reached, where we put on display things that, I mean, it's the internet, guys. Like, there's married men and married women like looking at you. You know what I mean? Like, you might be unintentionally splitting up marriages. You want to have that? You want to see that on the day of judgment? Not worth it. Not worth it. And don't think just because you wrap a scarf around your head that that makes you exempt. Does not. All right. When it comes to the soul, these are also things that we've talked about. I'm going to skip that because we're going to come around to it later. Last point before we get into questions. I hope you've been doing your questions on the Q&A, the QR code rather. Motives, motivation, why? Is it okay to seek to have a good character for lowly motives? It's okay. It's not optimal. It's not optimal, but it's acceptable. In fact, most people, they seek reward and they fear punishment. That's just like how they roll. That's why the Sharia has punishments. That's why there's Jannah and Nar, because, you know, would it be nice if people would just worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or develop virtue because it's the right thing to do? Yeah, that'd be nice. That'd be great. Are the majority of humanity going to do that? Absolutely not. And many people have come to me and said, you know what? I used to have a problem with all the talk about hellfire and this, that, and the third until after October 7th. Then I understood. Then I understood why we have these punishments. Then I understood why there's eternal damnation. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Netanyahu, Smotrich, all these guys. You understand. Like I think that these things, maybe 5 years ago we would have to go into it. I don't think we have to go into it anymore. It's clear that there's a special place in hell reserved for certain types of people. All right. What are your impediments? What are the things that stop you or prevent you on your path to developing your character? There's qusur and taqsir. Qusur, don't worry about it. It means you're not able to. Allah forgives all of that. But taqsir is your problem, okay? And there's 4 types of it. Some people are just ignorant. Some people, this is all new to them. Alhamdulillah, that's actually pretty easy to remedy. All you have to do is be educated. You're like a blank slate. You just need someone to write on you. The next type is a little bit more advanced. That's someone who is both ignorant and they're lost. They know the truth, but they don't follow it up with action. That person needs better company. That person needs better habits. The third stage is someone who's ignorant, lost, and immoral. Okay, so that they lack discernment to the point where they've allowed their discernment to atrophy to the point where they view good as evil and evil as good. That's difficult. Al-Rāghib al-Iṣfahānī says that it's difficult to cure this person. It's, if you were to cure this person, it's like trying to remove ink from a paper. You can't do it without tearing the paper. And then the last stage is someone who's just so far gone that they're lost. And only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows truly who is in that category, but we seek refuge in it for that. Good. I'm going to condense here. All right, very good. We'll leave off on this. no, there was a really, all right, I'll save that for next time. All right, teaser. Are some of the virtues gendered? Are some virtues more appropriate for men than women or vice versa? Al-Rāghib al-Iṣfahānī has a really spicy take on that. Short answer, yes. But I'm going to leave the details till tomorrow. So we're going to, yeah. No. We're going to take questions. If there's no questions, maybe I'll bring it up. Al-Rāghib al-Iṣfahānī ends this section by talking about who a person should be like, or he gives a parable. A believer should be like a bee, honeybee, okay? And the opposite is a parasite. Think about your interaction with this world. How does the bee interact with the world? A bee takes what he needs from the flower without destroying the flower. And then he takes it and turns it into something even better, which is honey. And honeybees are actually different than bumblebees or wasps or whatever. They actually make more honey than what they need for themselves. So that's why we actually can be in a symbiotic relationship or a mutually beneficial relationship with honeybees, because if you build them the structure, right, the infrastructure for their nests and their honeycombs, they'll just keep making honey. So you can actually take the excess and not harm the bees whatsoever. SubhanAllah, right? You leave the world better than you found it. You take something without damaging and you turn it into something beautiful and you give it back. The parasite, on the other hand, is the opposite. It takes without giving back. It abandons and destroys what it has used up. Next time, we're going to get into the faculties. We're going to actually get into these three things, which are the intellect and the desire and anger. We're going to talk about the intellect first, but I'm going to log into Slido and see what we got here for questions. Wait a minute. I need help. Tech support. Yeah, just use that. All right, 35 questions. Sorry, we're going to have to wait for the gendered virtues till next time. Allahu Akbar. I'm not going to name you, bro, but I got corrected on the Roots lyrics. The Seed 2.0 wasn't about cheating. It was a metaphor really breaking away from the mainstream Korean music. Allahu Akbar. That makes me feel good, because I actually think that Black Thought is the superior Muslim rapper and artist. Like, he's the best. Like, and I'm a Mos Def fan as well, you know, Yassine Bey. But Black Thought is on another level, mashallah. Like, sorry guys, I'm going to nerd out for a second. If poetry is dead, it's not dead, it's rap. It is. Unfortunately, there's the industrialization and the commercialization of the art form, which has led to many, many negative things. But the art form itself, I'm waiting for the Habib of rap. We need like a Habib, Habib for UFC. We need a Habib of rap. So thank you for correcting me. That actually makes me feel real better, because I actually love me some Black Thought. When praying in front of people or leading the salah, I tend to be more concentrated than I am praying alone. How do I translate the focus to when I'm alone? Al-Rāghib al-Iṣfahānī gets into this. He talks about how you feel in front of people versus how you feel in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's actually, take that as diagnostic. I guess just like take that as diagnostic and notice that that's where you aspire to be. And it's going to take, we'll get into it tomorrow actually. There's people who are only ashamed in front of other people. That's level 1. Level 2 is you're ashamed in front of yourself. And one of the interesting intersections with modern psychology here is you actually have to learn to love yourself before you can actually get to that level. You can't get to that level without actually loving yourself. And then the last level, the third level, is loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so much that you are ashamed in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We'll get there. Why is, oh man, the questions just, can you please explain why social media is haram? Yeah, because Zuckerberg did it. The Gen Zers are all about affirmation, validation. How do we address, listen, is Zuckerberg your friend? Like, look at that guy's face. Do you think that he wants good for you? Okay, Elon Musk, come on. Just like, The Gen Zers are all about affirmation, validation. How do we address that as parents? Because kids guilt us into unsupportive parents. That's about connection. You know, they say, like, you know, if you have 10 interactions, 9 should be, you know, either affirming or building, and 1 should be like corrective. You know, you need to dial in that ratio. Many of us just don't have good relationships with our kids, and then we expect them to listen to us when we correct them. Reach before you teach. Connect before you correct. All these things, right? There's true. You have to have a relationship. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ, I mean, think about this. This is like embarrassing as a parent. When Malik ibn Anas, Anas ibn Malik said that he was the servant of the Prophet ﷺ for 10 years. And he says in the hadith, and I was messing up. Of course, I'm paraphrasing. He didn't say that. But he was not always obviously doing things the way the Prophet ﷺ instructed or asked. Never once did the Prophet ﷺ ask him, why did you do this? Or why didn't you do that? Can you imagine? I can't get through like 2 hours without saying that to my kids. But that indicates the level of relationship that the Prophet ﷺ had with people. And a whole treatise could be written on the EQ of the Prophet ﷺ and how he built relationships, right? The relationship is key. Everything else is just symptomatic of the relationship. Is having the desire to message your friends all the time and to want to go to cafes part of fulfilling lower self-desires? How should one limit this? It could indicate a hollowness, and we'll get into that when we talk about the faculty of desire in a dedicated session. One of the really interesting connections that I just teased is the difference, there's a connection between modern psychoanalytic theory and what al-Rāghib al-Iṣfahānī goes into when it comes to desire. And how sometimes we think of a person who's overcome with their desire as just like this like total narcissist, like manipulative type. But sometimes it's the empty person. Sometimes it's a person who's actually hollow and they're craving validation and connection. We're going to talk about that. Non-Muslims often use the promise of huris and Jannah to make Muslim men seem perverse. Like this is a perverse goal. How do you respond to this? This is selective outrage. Like look at the things that they look at on, like, in real life. Like how many, what's their body count? You want to talk to me about huris? What's your body? Like, come on. Like, again, post October 7th, guys, or after October 7th, we cannot assume a defensive position on morality anymore, right? These people are hypocrites. They're selective. They don't really believe in these things. Many of these like gotcha type situations, they don't even believe in anything themselves. So don't explain to me like perversion. You're perverted. No, seriously, like is justifying bombing a kid's school in Iran not more perverted than huris in Jannah? Is blowing up hospitals in Gaza not more perverted than huris in Jannah? Like, give me a break. Let's talk about perversion. Let's actually talk about perversion. They're not ready for that conversation. So that's the type of energy you need to bring to that. As one who observes hijab, I find it difficult to explain to women who say that they don't wear it because they're not ready. How do you explain the obligation of covering? Well, I mean, I kind of already did, right? That this is a very old trick of shaitan. You don't have to be ready. Think about the hijab as a transformative. Sorry, performative is actually original meaning. One of my pet peeves is, within feminist theory, gender is performative. Judith Butler actually means that it creates reality. It doesn't mean you're performing. But everybody today, they use the word performative to mean you're performing. That's not what it means. Anyway, whatever. That when she said that gender is performative, she meant the same thing that we're saying here, that there's a habit to it, that the habitus that you engage in actually creates the possibilities for the future. So hijab is the same. That when you put it on, as long as no one's forcing you, if you put it on voluntarily, you're actually creating a pathway to a different future you. You're actually achieving a transformation on yourself, even if it happens slowly. So you can answer with Judith Butler, just substitute the hijab is performative. I appreciate you. I appreciate you, sister. I appreciate you, sister. Why is hijab emphasized for women more than men? Men are not taught their hijab. That's very true. I never thought, listen, I didn't have it on my bingo card. And I actually have it in the next session to talk about gymflation and the gym culture and stuff like that. guys are like smashing their jaws with hammers and stuff, apparently, like looks maxing and all this stuff. What is happening? What is going on? Like, what type of universe do we live in? So yeah, men, you got to straighten up too. Absolutely. Like I like haya, and we'll get to it. There's a dedicated section on bashfulness. Bashfulness is such an integral part of the deen. You should have shame, and that is when I tease the thing about like are some virtues gendered or not, I'll tease a little more. al-Iṣfahānī says, in degree but not in kind. Right? Meaning that like there are certain things that are more emphasized, and we'll talk about those, but we absolutely have, haya is for men and women. Like bashfulness is for men and women. We have to be ashamed. And again, that same tripartite thing, like being ashamed in front of others is the lowest bar, right? Be ashamed in front of yourself. Like have some self-respect. Like dudes walking around in tank tops and like, trying to, like have some self-respect, man. Like imagine like, I don't know, like imagine you're an old man, like you're 70, and like your kids come across some pictures of you on social media, like flexing in the mirror at the gym. That's why, we have aib, like that nice Arabic phrase, it's just like does so much work. We can't like explain it. It's like totally synthetic, like aib, it's like, ew. It's like, just respect yourself a little bit more than that. You know what I mean? Anyway, like, I agree. I agree with your point. Like, there are differentiations, and there's differentiation in the Sharia because men and women are different. لَيْسَ ذَكْرُ كَالْأُنْثَى. So it would follow logically that some of the rules and regulations are differentiated accordingly. But there's underlying values and virtues that are for both. So of course, there are certain things that are different for women than there are for men. But with that recognized, yeah, 100%. We don't... But okay, if I were to give the benefit of the doubt, I would also say because the colonizers have targeted our women in a very particular way. And that's something that they haven't done to the men in the same way. So if I'm going to give benefit of the doubt to why women get more attention on hijab and these types of things, Fanon said it. I saw a bro with a Fanon shirt, respect, yesterday. Undressing the Muslim women is a goal of colonial modernity, right? A very explicitly stated one. And I won't get into some of the dark stuff that's out there, but like, so there's whether we like it or not, there is a knee-jerk reaction to that, which is a ghaira. We'll talk about ghaira, a defensiveness. There's a positive and a negative ghaira, but it is also historically comes out of this experience of our women being particularly targeted in this way. Things are still jumping around all over the place, so I apologize if I miss your question. I'm not trying to ignore it. It's the questions keep on moving on me. I've always been taught that the reason to wear hijab is because Allah said so. What's the reason behind Allah said so? We're talking about that now. Let's get into it more specifically with a dedicated discussion on bashfulness, but I agree. I'm not a satisfied with Allah said so kind of guy, you can probably tell. So going to the bottom is very important to developing your yaqeen. What is shaitan's true goal? To divert people who want to do good. That's why he leaves the people who don't want to do good alone. If you're a leader in a field, how do you know when you're at a stage of sharing knowledge versus still working on applying this knowledge to you and your family? It's different, but look at the people around you. Sometimes it's either going to be you or that joker with a podcast, Mike, right? So sometimes you need to actually fill up a space that someone worse would take. The scholars talk about this when it comes to qada, like the person who is, what's the ruling of being a qadi? There are situations in which it's obligatory. If you're the most qualified person, and if you don't do it, not qualified people are going to do it, you actually have then an obligation to step into that field and do it. Hard time forgiving those who hurt me. My care is same as theirs for me, but I sacrifice more and it's not reciprocated. Is this a me problem of expectation? We're going to talk about that. The limits of forgiveness, justice, these types of things. We're going to talk about that. Dedicated session. Have become disillusioned with the masjid. You're not alone. I hate feeling this way, but I'm disappointed and hurt by leadership, masjid board, etc. Advice. So much could be said. We're all there with you. Pass. I don't want to pass. But I don't want to rant either about masjids and how dysfunctional they are. All of us have I think, some practical concerns when it comes to trying to get into the best situation for ourselves spiritually, which might include moving, and then also trying to have a beneficial effect on the communities around us and trying to make them better. I'll leave it at that for now. Can you please teach us how to get off WhatsApp and social media? Yeah, it's easy. You get a Nokia, you get a smartphone. Sorry, this is the real smartphone. And you hit that like uninstall button on WhatsApp, and then you go and pull yourself a nice shot of espresso. It's like very va bene, it's like perfect. It's not bitter, it's not hollow. And you watch the sunset, and you laugh. Do you miss out on events? No. Do you have family who feel you've abandoned them because you left your group? No. I call them. Because I grew up in the 90s where we used to like walk or ride a bike to a friend's house and knock on the door. Hey, can Dan come out to play? Yeah, we got a game of tackle football in the concrete empty lot. That's how we grew up. We did that, right? So it's going to be okay. When grounding beliefs in evidence, what would you tell a 15-year-old girl who is discouraged by the outwardly restrictive rules regarding women's clothing? I mean, I think two things. Knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes a long way, because if you don't trust Allah, how can you trust His rules? Same goes with parents, right? And from someone who came from outside of Islam, one of the hardest things for converts is getting over false beliefs about Allah. If you were raised in Christianity, you've got a whole bunch of nonsense that you were taught about Allah that you kind of have to get over and work through to understand who Allah actually is. It develops a lot more trust for His rules and guidelines. Second is your experience of the dunya, and you're seeing where things are going and understanding some. I alluded to some of those things yesterday with Keanu Reeves and whatever. The more history plays out, the more we see the wisdom behind the Sharia and its guidelines. Right? In a post-Epstein world, I think we see a lot of things happening. Assalamu alaikum. Please explain the saying, houses are built from the basement and not the roof. You gave it as an answer yesterday. Jazakallah khair. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. That means that there's sequence to things, and sometimes we get ahead of ourselves by wanting to address the roof, which is more visible than the basement or the foundation. So I believe the question yesterday was about khilafah, and we're talking politics and this and that and the third, stuff that we all probably, especially the men, would love to just talk about all the time. But those things have foundations, and there's things that a car has to go through the paces, you have to get through the gears in order to get to full speed. So that's what I kind of meant by that. Correction on the seed, thank you very much. When praying in front, same one, they're jumping around, apologize. General parameters around looking or dressing well without displaying your beauty. How baggy versus form-fitting? Libas al-shuhra, the Prophet ﷺ warned against libas al-shuhra. What is libas al-shuhra? It is anything yaltafit ilayhi an-nadhr, anything that causes people to, look at you like it's inherently attractive or alluring. Right? We should be alluring people with our clothing, right? So you can dress well, but not and that's culturally dependent. And part of the beauties of the Sharia is that if you go to a place like Nigeria, where it's like the colors are like popping, that looks a lot different. The application of that guidance and guidelines is very different than like if you go to like Saudi Arabia, where your choices are white or black, right? So some of these things are culturally dependent, which is part of the beauty in how the Sharia is able to be universally applied. In Istanbul is different than Urneza, okay? So these things come into context, but in general, how much of the body is covered, the manner in which it's covered, so that it's not form-fitting, these types of things, or see-through and those types of things. That's usually how the ulama talk about those things. They have this concept in Italian, it's called bella figura. It's like, it doesn't mean that you have to spend a lot of money on your clothes. It doesn't mean that you have to have expensive things, but it means that you demonstrate that you care about how you appear, and that not in a superficial way. Just like that you invest care into looking like put together. You're presentable, maybe we would say, right? It doesn't have to be, Stevie Wonder, what did he say in the one song? his clothes are old, but never are they dirty, right? Just enough of this today, right? That it's a similar concept, right? You can be, that's what being well-dressed means. That's what being presentable means. It doesn't mean being flashy. It doesn't mean like being ostentatious or splashing a lot of money. In fact, Sheikh Haifa Yunus passes a very strict fatwa on expensive luxury bags, ladies. So you should check that out. She said it, not me. I'm just the messenger. Don't kill the messenger. Is individualism all around bad? Our colleges teach of the importance of individualism, but I hear it in religious saying it's bad. Where do we balance? I'll try to talk about that more tomorrow. It's a very important point. I would say that we're past moderation in the society. I think that our late capitalist society wants us to be hyper-individualized in order to break us down and to make us more pliable, more governable, better consumers, right? And so that's excess. Can you explain the bee example again? Later. Can you help explain hur al-ain? Really again? Especially non-Muslim women that ask about it and have an issue with it. I mean, the thing is, again, you have two things that are held in tension. You have, how is Allah going to motivate people to get to Jannah? And then you have, the Prophet ﷺ said that Jannah has what no eye has seen and no ear has heard and what no one can imagine. So those two things do exist in tension. But in the motivation of people, I'm not saying that it's just allegory, but knowing Islam, one of the things I love about Islam, convert's perspective, it's very practical. It's extremely practical. What do men want, ladies? Like, let's just be honest with yourself. What do most men in the world, not these men, these noble men here, what do most men in the world want? All right. If that's your solid state, your basis, your ground level, how are you going to work with that and get them to Jannah? And get them to not oppress people, not get them to go out wilding out and doing all crazy stuff. You could say, well, they shouldn't want that. Okay, that's ideal. Maybe you're right. Maybe they shouldn't. But the reality is that they do. So how do you work with that? Islam is a practical religion. That's all I got to say. Requests. Given your fatwa on social media, would Yaqeen ever make a video content accessible without YouTube? I hope so. We have these discussions inside internally all the time. Is there a day where we all just leave social media, get off of YouTube, ride into the hills, enjoy that sunset with the espresso? Thoughts on Abu Hanifa's opinion that there's no interest in non-Muslim lands? Okay, listen, with all due respect to all of our ai''imma, time vindicates certain opinions sometimes. I'll give a positive example and let you read between the lines. When it comes to Imam Malik's opinion, one of the mufradat of the madhab Maliki is that when Allah said in Surah Al-Anfal that you are allowed to retreat as an army, a Muslim army, from a force that's twice the number. There's a debate within the madhahib and the fuqaha. Is this number of soldiers or is it number of force, like power? And before the modern age, when you measured force in like the number of soldiers, a more literal interpretation made a lot of sense. Once we started getting airplanes and fighter jets, Malik's opinion is like, whoa, that's really important that he had that opinion, because you can be 2 times as strong or 3 times as strong as 4 times as strong and not have as many actual individual soldiers. So sometimes time bears out different opinions. When it comes to this particular opinion on no interest in non-Muslim lands, I don't know. Look at the people who are associated, our cousins who are associated with interest and have a similar logic when it comes to how they treat goys and how that's working out for them. Is that what's going to make people trust you? Not really. I don't think it's a good look. I think that we have to have ihsan. People are upset about interest in these lands. You know, we have to use that opportunity. We have an opportunity to actually, in Minnesota, they have interest-free loans for first-time house buyers. Creeping Sharia, woo! Like, these are things that we can actually present to people as, here's a better way to do things, right? I don't think we should pass up that opportunity just because it might be more convenient, like for like home buying or something. You know what I mean? I'm cutting into Dr. Ali's time. I really don't want to do that, but I don't want to not answer questions either. I'm only going to pick the best questions. One sec. All right, we're going to talk about that later. Sorry, the questions continue. I thought that closing the questions would stop them from jumping around, but I guess people are still upvoting them, so they keep on jumping around on me. Okay, we'll talk about the motivation of desire anyway. What if my social media is when? Yes, so here's the thing. I did say to someone who approached me, if you absolutely must have social media accounts, make them private. You and your sisters, you and your family, right? Go back to how it used to be. Make it into almost like a group chat, right? If you're not a producer, right? If you're not collective. That's advice, take it or leave it, just my opinion. We'll talk about bad habits. Got a Harry Potter question. At what age should we start teaching our kids to restrict their desires? You can teach them very early to just be patient when they're hungry. Right? That comes in with desires, right? In Gaza, some of the families will give their kids a bottle of water and a couple dates and say, that's all you have for today, as an exercise. Can you expand on why sexy is only halal in marriage? I think you mean sex is only halal in marriage. I'll deal with that when we get to desires, okay? There's a lot of negative consequences to sex outside of marriage, both psychological, okay, and beyond what you're used to hearing. We'll talk about that. All right, I think I covered most of them. Some of them jumped in, I'm sorry. So like if someone upvoted something, it jumped to the top, and now I think I skipped it. But if I missed it, you can flag me down, or you can ask it again tomorrow. Marijuana, haram. That's easy. Have you smoked weed? It's not pleasant. Like, I accepted Islam when I was 20, okay? So like I had a life before. I can't understand why someone would want to smoke weed. Weed is the most nasty, like smelly. It doesn't make you feel good. It doesn't make you smart. It doesn't make you, like there's nothing that it does for you. It makes you sleepy. Like you and your bros, like, just like sitting around. It's like such a stupid thing. Like of all the sins, you're gonna pick marijuana? It's like, I don't want to say pick a better sin. That would be not good advice. But, all right, we better stop here. Barakallahu feek. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is best. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Barakallahu feek.